Good morning at Utrecht, Netherlands. We are here, of course, for the 2023 Pokemon Utrecht special event. And what an exciting weekend it has been so far. We are, of course, going to be going into round 2 of Day 2 Swiss. I myself am Kostadai Demos, and I am joined once again by Simon van der Bort, aka Schmon.
Exactly. Happy to be here again for this Day 2. We already did a small little interview just now as well, where just showcasing that Encore really putting in the work on the Iron Bundle, really.
It's been something that's been rising in popularity, right?
Yeah, and as the player themselves mentioned as well, doesn't like missing hydro pumps, which I fully agree with. That is one of the worst feelings that you can have there, really.
It's very valid because you're not depending on the utility of the water type coverage when it comes to the Iron Bundle, when either maybe your team doesn't need it because you have an alternative way or method of coverage when it comes to certain particular Pokemon that you're trying to cover for, or you just don't want to miss.
Exactly.
You just don't want to miss. And you may be running into situations where you have like a King Gambit, which has Sucker Punch, so you could go and read through the lines a bit, maybe anticipate that, go for an Encore straight away, and all of a sudden you've locked that Pokemon into a move which it might not be beneficial for.
Exactly. It is those small things that can change a little bit from Pokemon to Pokemon, what makes these teams so interesting as well. Now we are back here with round 2, I suppose, and we do have we already know what our players, who our players are, I should mention.
We do indeed. We have Federico Camporesi versus Álex Gómez. So, going to be a very exciting and blood-boiling game, I feel, between these two players. Very well-known players across not only their independent regions, community, as well as the entire of Europe. So really looking forward to seeing what sort of gameplay we can see from them, because there's going to be a lot of experience going into this one.
Exactly, and these two players, of course, they're veteran players. They have been in the scene quite often as well. Álex, of course, being one of the two players that actually went 9-0 yesterday as well, which is very impressive to see as well. Now we get to see him on stream on this Day 2, where I'm just wanting to see how he will use his team this time around.
Exactly. I think Álex was not the only trainer to go undefeated in Day 1 of Swiss. He was also accompanied by his good friend Eric Rios, where it seems that Eric was able to go ahead and win out against the both of them in their duel in round 1 of Day 2 Swiss. However, we do have the trainers on the stage right now, just getting everything set up, you know. It's still the morning, things are still fresh, but that also has a couple of different factors going into it. The trainers will have to have had a very good rest, because there's a lot of things to decompress from going out of Day 1 of Swiss, going straight into Day 2. You need to make sure that you're in the right mindset and you've done a bit of research and a bit of your homework when it comes to what everyone else has been running in Day 1.
Exactly. Now, because, of course, you have a lot of these players that you already know, and you want to have that bit of information about their teams as well going around. We also as well have the teams as well. When I want to mention something, because I'm holding it in, but I need to say it. There's a beautiful belly bolt there as well on Federico's side. As we see actually their achievements as well on the screen. For Federico, the Liverpool Regionals Top 16, the 2022 in Worlds Day 2 competitor, in 2020 in a OCIC runner-up in seniors back then, and 2019 the NAAC Top 8 in senior division as well.
So we've got two trainers, I feel, at this point, where they've done really well in promoting themselves from the senior age division going on to the Masters. So Federico, of course, being an OCIC runner-up as well as NAIC Top 8, you know he's already got that consistency. He's got that really good, interesting team-building mindset in order to propel himself into his Masters Age Division debut, which we saw was in last London within the 2022 Worlds. So being a competitor is really good. You've got some really good experience. Going into the new season, we've got that top 16 at Liverpool's, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then going over onto Alex's side, I think we already covered it as well yesterday. Álex is one of those players where his name is very well known in the community. He's he's honestly, his consistency is one of the most unparalleled as long as he's in the right form, as well as a very interesting team. If he's feeling it, well, apparently Guillermo was feeling it, and he passed the team over to Álex, but Álex thought and saw that he flowed quite well in its comprehension.
Exactly. So Álex borrowing the team from a dear friend, of course, and will be showcasing this on stream and just showing that sometimes the friends do make better teas for you than you make your own teas sometimes.
Right, yeah.
And as we see, we have that Bully Bolt on screen as well. We have with Sucker Punch, Thunderbolt, Parabolic Charge, Muddy Water, and the Assault Vest, just trying to make it a bit more bulky. We have Great Tusk, Torkoal, just a nice combination with the Photosynthesis and the Drought. Arcanine for that always reliable Intimidate, while the Fluttermane and Roaring Moon also with that Photosynthesis really enjoying that Torkoal's presence as well.
Yeah, I didn't realize that David Kutesh came in as with an alternative name of Federico Camporesi, as it seems like it is the exact same team that he is running. I most definitely remember this. It seems like the exact near-like sets. I'm not sure if the training, of course, is any sort of different, but Federico definitely taking a page out of David Kutesh's book when it comes to a very interesting team that has a very nice niche. So being able to be piloted by Federico, he's done incredibly well to actually reach day 2 with a 9-1 record. I'm very confident that he is super well versed with this team and he's going to be making it a fascinating set.
Exactly. Of course, I want to see the Bully Bolt. That's personal bias. I love to see it. But we have seen the power that Torkoal has been providing. This support Torkoal with the helping hand and the Yonkoal, as we mentioned earlier, as well. So, but yeah, on the other side, we of course have Álex Gómez with his team of Kingambit, Amoonguss, Arcanine, Iron Bundle, Fluttermane, and Dragonite.
So, couple of very solid choices here. We don't see the encore on the Iron Bundle, so Hydro Pump has been preferred here. It sort of makes sense when you do have the Arcanine, Iron Bundle, and Amoonguss, Fire, Water, Grass Claw. You have that very good, no pun intended, spongy sort of way to handle a couple of different scenarios, no matter what sort of threats you're going to be faced against. You have the Kingambit. Having the low kick is quite nice. For opposing Kingambits, you do always have the option of going for the Fire Terror type. You've got Assault Vest, which is absolutely phenomenal when you go up against any sort of anti, or should I say counter, Fluttermane Iron Bundle leads, which don't have a lot of options going for themselves. And we've seen Dragonite, once again, just doing Dragonite stuff, having multi-scale, and just being an incredible Pokemon. But this time, Álex has actually opted to bring the Tailwind option.
The Tailwind being very interesting because yeah, raising that speed is very important in these situations, especially when, for example, the Iron Bundle itself doesn't have the booster energy, but this time around it's the Fluttermane. Now, potentially that Fluttermane, its special attack could be raised instead of its speed, but we will be seeing that shortly as we do see the game starting. We have the Roaring Moon and the Fluttermane on Federico's side, while on the other side we have the Fluttermane with the Photosynthesis activated thanks to that booster, and we do see the special attack on that side and the Amoonguss there.
Exactly. So given these leads at this current point, we know there's a lot of offensive pressure that can be coming out over from Federico's side. You've got the Roaring Moon accompanied by the Fluttermane, which will allow for immediate pressure. However, we've got the Amoonguss. It can try to go for any sort of redirections. We do need to take into consideration, as we've seen David Kutesh pilot this team before, the Torkoal is in the back. It is a viable switch in, perhaps for the Fluttermane, if you go in combination with the Roaring Moon, Terrastal into the Fire Terror. That could deal a lot of damage. Pick up most definitely a one-hit KO onto this Amoonguss if it doesn't protect or go for any sort of defensive switches or Terra typing.
Yeah, we do see the Terra come out there, I believe, from Alex's side, as we do see the Amoonguss going for that Terra type, seeing the Terra Water, trying to make sure that if the Salamas would have gone for example, a Terra Fire, a Terra Blast there, would be able to survive that, but we see the Roaring Moon actually just protecting, trying to see what Álex is planning to do, as the Fluttermane on Alex's side is thinking the same thing. No, you move first, I want to see what you're doing, as we see the Moonblast into Amoonguss, predicting that it would have switched to its typing. A great play there, just wow, a hard call out there, as we do see the Spore from the Amoonguss into the Roaring Moon, and amazingly played by Federico there.
Very nice play from Federico, completely understanding the board state and understanding the fact that Álex is going to read into that. We've got that immediate offensive pressure, so naturally, in turn 0, as we call it, when the Pokemon come out, the leads, essentially, we've got the advantage already in Federico's favor. He's able to make a bit more of a safer play in anticipation of Alex's more defensive one. So going for the very solid protect there onto the Roaring Moon, calling the Water Terra type into the Amoonguss like we just discussed. The Amoonguss needs to respect the Fire Terra type, Terra Blast, coming out from this Roaring Moon, if, of course, it is paired up with the Torkoal switching in. But we do not have any switches in turn 2. We do, however, see the Fire Terra type of the Roaring Moon. I was about to say Salamence. I love that Pokemon. But yes, Roaring Moon coming onto the field right now, threatening immense damage.
As we do see the Boom Blast coming out from the Fluttermane into the other Fluttermane from Federico's side, while the Terra Blast from the Roaring Moon actually going into that Fluttermane as well after they protected, so couldn't protect the second time, meaning this Fluttermane has just gone down. While, of course, the Amoonguss now being set alone on this field has the potential to now do a little sleepy dance of sporing the Roaring Moon. A big threat suddenly on its first turn of sleep. Now,
exactly, as we're going to be seeing the Iron Bundle now coming onto the field. So Fluttermane is out for the count on Alex's side. We do have the Roaring Moon, which is now asleep too. So in this scenario, Amoonguss has done a very good job in at least still staying on the field, slowing down the momentum of this Roaring Moon. It is a bit susceptible to the fairy type Moonblast coming out from the Desert Gleam. However, we do have Iron Bundle, which is in a good position to start, maybe perhaps getting Icy Winds off or trying to threaten with that Hydro Pump, which does connect and does pick up the KO. One hit knockout straight out for the count of game 1. Terra type gone as well as Roaring Moon.
That is, of course, the great thing about hitting your Hydro Pumps. If you're able to hit them, they will deal a lot of damage. And we see the Moonblast into the Amoonguss, just doing a lot of damage. Amoonguss still hanging on and just being able to put something else to sleep now as well.
Exactly. So we've got the situation where that proves to why Hydro Pump can be quite nice, depending on the matchup.
Exactly. It's just the way you play. And if you hit them, why not click it? And we do see the Great Tusk being switched in here now. Now Iron Bundle, of course, being the fastest Pokemon onto the field right now, having the potential to hit that Great Tusk super effectively, but we do know that the Great Tusk is carrying that Focus Sash, even though its special defense might not be the greatest there, but certainly needing 2 attacks to make sure that this Pokemon will go down. Amoonguss itself being a bit low, could be switched out for the Regenerator, as we do see that happen right now.
Very nice call out there, Shmon, as it will be able to re-heal a bit of its HP in favor of Kingambit, having a bit of a more defensive switch coming into the play, maybe wanting to offer that offensive pressure, countering the Fluttermane on the opposing side in the subsequent turn, as Icy Wind does come out, does connect onto what is the still sleeping Fluttermane, dropping its speed now to -1 stages, and it does still incur the mandatory sleep turn.
Exactly, and now with the switching from the Kingambit, suddenly threatening that Fluttermane a bit more, because of course Fluttermane, the defense is not the greatest, and Kingambit has a very respectable attack stat. Of course, now that the Great Tusk also protected, not really wanting to risk maybe to protect again, rather predicting going for a switch potentially to another Pokemon, as we do see that happen as well. We do see the switch out to the Torkoal. Torkoal being switched in is a very nice switch, because of course that any ice move that the potential Iron Bundle went for doesn't affect it, and the Photosynthesis boost of the special attack from this Choice Specs Misdreavus as well.
As we're going to be seeing the Sucker Punch actually fails. Freeze Dry does target into the Torkoal slot right now, as we do see the Fluttermane does wake up and does go for the Moonblast. So the Sucker Punch was trying to target down the Great Tusk in order to break its Focus Sash. It was not met. It was only met with that switch, and Fluttermane was very free to bring that Iron Bundle down to a single digit of its hit point.
That is incredible to see. Of course, in that turn, that Fluttermane had a chance to wake up there. Just trying to make sure that your Great Tusk keeps its focus sash, that you can use it for later as well. Now the Torkoal being onto the field, putting up the sun, making sure that every Hydro Pump that the Iron Bundle might click will be weakened a bit, but also just that Fluttermane having that much more power thanks to that Photosynthesis boost together with its choice specs attack as well.
Exactly. So a couple of different things going on, a lot of moving pieces, so to speak. I think that's the sort of really nice thing about Torkoal-based core teams which do have the photosynthesis boost Paradox Pokemon by its side. You're able to further enhance the synergistic compatibility between them both, as Iron Bundle does opt to go for the Protect. Amoonguss is now back onto the field, will actually be avoiding that Moonblast, and because of its Water Terror typing here, it'll actually be able to withstand any sort of Fire-type moves if the Torkoal wanted to go for the Overheat, but we see the double up into the Iron Bundle with the Clear Smog. So definitely wanting to focus down on the Iron Bundle, as it could be threatening with its speed control as well as any additional damage output it's able to land.
Exactly. This Fluttermane as well, just being put to sleep, does not want to be put to sleep again by these Amoonguss, of course. Now Amoonguss a bit more damage than it was before because, of course, with that Regenerate healed a bit, but not quite enough, it seems, to potentially survive yet another Moonblast. Certainly not after this Fluttermane has been given that extreme boost of the sun just being there, making sure that special attack would be raised even more.
Well, exactly that. So the fact that you're able to further bolster the damage output as you have that synergy going with the Torkoal just means that you are an absolute threat on the field. And I think Amoonguss, I was going to say Amoonguss actually recognizes that and does switch out. Will be able to get further regeneration dealt onto its side. Hydro Pump does connect. Of course, not picking up the KO onto the Torkoal, even though it is less bulky on its special defensive side. It will be able to withstand it thanks to the sun and get a bit of recovery. Moonblast dealing so much damage. Oh no, we see the special attack drop, which of course will not matter for this King Gambit, given the situation that it's not especially offensively output. But we've got the Defiant +2 in its arsenal. It's going to be able to be packing an even stronger punch.
Yes, exactly. Now, you would like to see these special tank drops happen, but for some reason, they seem to be attracted to King Gambits every time.
Right?
King Gambits then getting the Define boost. Now, it's Sucker Punch, putting his Sucker Punch power to a whole other level, of course, making sure that the Fluttermane will still feel threatened with these following Sucker Punch potentially, or any other physical moves that might throw out. Of course, we have seen that the King Gambit took quite a bit of damage in the sun with the choice spec, even though this King Gambit is an Assault Vest set.
No, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing about compounding multipliers that come into effect, especially when you have such good synergy on the field or in that team archetype. Icy Wind is going to be connecting on both the Torkoal and the Fluttermane. We do know that the Iron Bundle is on a Yawn tick turn base right now, so at the end of the turn, it will be going to sleep because it has not switched out, and the Moonblast does pick up the KO onto the King Gambit, leaving, unfortunately for Álex, very little room to run this game one back and actually get the win. Federico looking to be in very good dominant possession of the game one and forcing the win.
Yeah, it was still a hard position for that King Gambit, of course, being there in a situation where the Torkoal and the Fluttermane being there, possibly both to threaten that King Gambit with the Overheat and the Moonblast. Like, both of them could be potentially a KO there. Might have predicted a switch from the Fluttermane side, going back to that Great Tusk, trying to see if trying to avoid that Sucker Punch, because of course you are choice specs, meaning if you stay in, you will have to attack, and that choice spec Sucker Punch can definitely pack a wallop, so to speak, because of that +2.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we're going to be seeing now Álex is just taking a bit more time just to consider what he's going to be doing for Game 2. Obviously, at this point, Amoonguss, even though I love the Pokemon, I don't think it's capable of picking up KOs onto a Torkoal, Fluttermane, and Great Tusk all on its lonesome self in a 3 versus 1 scenario. So Álex doing something which we have seen very well experienced players consider and do. You just want to bide your time. think clearly. You've got the in-game sort of a timer remaining for the turn, 45 seconds, just to recalibrate your mind and say, okay, cool, let me take myself a bit out of that game 1. What can I learn from it? What can I adapt going into game 2? I can sort of have a better, clearer understanding of Federico's game strategy. How can I counteract it? How can I put the pressure back onto them to force this affair to a game 3 and run away with the win to propel him to 10-1?
Exactly. Now, possibly seeing like how much the Fluttermane did with the Assault Fed, on the Assault Fed, King Gambit, Wild Choice specs in the sub, doing that much damage to it as well, gives Álex probably a good idea like how strong this Fluttermane is like trained in that special attack region, trying to see like what are my options. It is a bit harder, and like just to protect you, like just get that a little bit more of time to make a completely new game plan. Of course, Federico, like having won this game, knows what he did well that game and tries to think what Álex will be thinking of to, well, kind of spin the game around.
Well, exactly, because it's a time for both trainers to take that into consideration. Of course, even though technically gameplay-wise the game isn't over, we're already thinking about game 2. And from Alex's side, I think the Iron Bundle did function really well. It was able to connect the Hydro Pumps that it most definitely needed to in order to put himself into a better situation. However, we've seen this previously, at least with David Kutesh and his playstyle, having the core of Great Tusk, Torkoal, Fluttermane, and Roaring Moon. You've got the Drought ability available for all 3 other photosynthesis-based Paradox Pokemon in order to get the further damage output necessary to just run away with the damage, because that's the thing, that's the nature of this core. It's all about damage. If you're able to put yourself in a really good situation where you're able to outspeed and just pick up the immediate KOs, leave little room for adaptation from your opponent, you just win.
Exactly. Like the photosynthesis boost in the sun is already a great advantage, and then that Torkoal has that, of course, that friendly face and saying, "Let me give you a helping hand right there with that that move." Just trying to make sure that, as you said, damage KOs, just get them. If I have them, it's gone, and like we can continue moving forward and planning what to do. So yeah, that first game going to Federico. Very interesting to see what different game plan will be made. We saw in turn 1, of course, that hard predict of that Amoonguss going for that potential Terra, going for that potential Terra Water, and then of course Federico maybe predicting that, maybe just thinking it could have switched out, maybe
played a bit more safe.
Yeah, played a bit more safe. Went for the Moonblast there, just a strong overall move onto the Amoonguss, and it really worked out very well, protecting his Roaring Moon as well, just making sure that it wasn't put to sleep.
You don't want to rush a game 1, turn 1. There are the scenarios where if, for example, both trainers have met each other in Swiss the previous day, you've already played a whole set. Whether that being a 2-0 victory for one of them or a 2-1 victory for the other. This is a lot to take in. You know that your opponent is a world-class caliber sort of player, so you're thinking, okay, you know what, let's put aside any pleasantries. We know the real juice of the matter. I know that you're going to try to target that down, so I'm just going to predict your hard predict, because I know that your playstyle might be a bit more offensive, might be more straight to the point. But Federico is like, no, you know what, I want to set the own tempo to my own game. Let me just scout out to see what you're going to do, Álex, because I feel like you've got your foot just one step behind at turn 0 at the leads. So I'm just going to experiment, see what sort of notion you want to go for, and then adapt to it. And that's what he did incredibly well. And he was, most importantly, in a better position from turn 0. So is there a way that Álex can do the exact same to Federico and have that turn 0 lead advantage going into this game too?
Well, we already know that the Fluttermane on Alex's side does have that booster energy on its own. Of course, if the Torkoal comes in, it will use that first, so giving it the potential to switch out later and come back in, using that photosynthesis boost when the Torkoal Sun would have run out. But as I wanted to say, the Dragonite seems to me to be very interesting, as we do see it on the field now. Fluttermane, its photosynthesis activating, getting that special attack a little bit more up, and the Dragonite with that potential tailwind as well.
Yeah, so we're already seeing the adaptation of you want to be able to get that immediate pressure off as soon as possible. If not turn 1, if maybe you could go ahead and set up a Tailwind, you can do it turn 2. However, Dragonite coming into the fray right now is quite nice, especially when looking at that Great Tusk. You're able to at least position yourself to the point where if you can get a Flying type Terra dealt from your side of the field, you know there is a potential of a Breaking Swipe coming out from the Roaring Moon, but that would be ignoring the Flutter Mane on Alex's side. So Flutter Mane being there kind of forces the Roaring Moon to either go for a defensive play or go for a defensive Terra in anticipation of it, because it's just ready to deal the damage. Dragonite is quite nice, both for speed control purposes as well as getting Terra Blast onto Great Tusk, breaking the Focus Sash, and then follow up Extreme Speed if you haven't set up the Tailwind.
Exactly, and we do see that Roaring Moon going for that Terra Fire. It does have that access to that Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe, of course, hitting both targets and lowering the attack of that, for example, that Dragonite, mainly because, of course, the Flutter Mane will not be affected. But we do see the Terra from the Dragonite as well, going for that Terra Fly. And we have seen this too yesterday. We have seen this in other tournaments. This probably means that there's a pretty strong Terra Blast incoming as well.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a monster machine, as we have seen in yesterday's stream. However, Breaking Swipe does connect only with the Dragonite due to the Fairy type immunity to Dragon. Shadow Ball going into the Roaring Moon, expecting, of course, the Fire Terra type of the Roaring Moon. Great Tusk will actually go for the close combat as well, just to make sure. Understandably, we already knew that the Dragonite already had a Flying type immunity to the ground. Terra Blast flying, picks up the KO. I'm not entirely sold on the fact on whether that was, I still think it does, because you got to consider the Breaking Swipe. It was able to drop the attack by one stage of this Dragonite. It may have indeed come into effect, vary based on certain types of training, as well as the damage rolls, but a very, very strong play from Álex, already putting the pressure on, and now he's got the advantage.
Exactly. That Great Tusk right now on the field, not really enjoying its time. Its main stab being fighting and ground, and the Dragonite resisting both, well, even being immune to the ground one, while the Flutter Mane being immune to the fighting one. Yeah. Not really having the best of time there, but that Dragonite showcasing that Terra Blast, still terrifying, excuse me, to have opposed to you, as now the Flutter Mane is onto the field. And the thing is with Flutter Manes, dependent on how they are trained, they can try to KO each other, but most of the time you have them trained just right that they survive each other's Shadow Ball as well. And we do see the protect from the Great Tusk actually, as the Flutter Mane from Federico's side goes for the Shadow Ball into the Dragonite, getting that KO as well. Of course, choice specs, very respectful. Do not forget, while this Dragonite does manage to go down.
Exactly, having the additional, should I say, inventory of having the spectacles on this Flutter Mane enhances its damage output, as it is going to be receiving the Dazzling Gleam from its opposing mirrored Flutter Mane counterpart, dealing respectful amounts of damage. We do know, of course, and we have covered multiple times, Flutter Mane does actually have some pretty good special defenses when it comes to its bulk, as in contrast to its physical.
Yeah, and so a real quick move decision there. We have the switch out from the Great Tusk into the Torkoal. Torkoal, of course, setting up that sun. It's sunny today now in Utrecht. And now the Photosynthesis will activate, of course, from the Flutter Mane. The opposing Flutter Mane ability will not be activated because the booster energy is already in play, as we see the Shadow Ball into the Flutter Mane. Oh, missing out on the KO there. Wow. Spectacular to see a choice specs boosted, Photosynthesis boosted, didn't KO the opposing Flutter Mane, showcasing the way it's trained is a bit more bulky as well.
It really is, and it just goes to show why, it's actually going down for the counter. Going to show how detrimental it was that it was unfortunately not able to pick up the KO onto Alex's Flutter Mane there. Had a really nice interaction. This is what we're kind of talking about this core of the Photosynthesis plus the Drought ability. You're able to switch it in, or that being the Torkoal, at any immediate point in order to further boost or should I say, change and influence a certain specific situation of the board at any current moment, and kind of give that surprise factor onto your opponent. So the fact that we have a choice specs Flutter Mane that essentially gets the equivalent to a choice Scarf boost due to its training is quite important in order to allow it to actually outspeed both the Iron Bundle on Alex's side as well as the Flutter main, but unfortunately for Federico, he did actually miss out on picking up the KO.
Yeah, we see the Great Tusk going for that Protect, just trying to make sure that it doesn't get double targeted. We do see the Freeze Drive from the Iron Bundle into that Great Tusk, just trying to make sure as much damage as possible, while the Dazzling Gleam coming out from the Flutter main into this Torkoal Solis. Torkoal, of course, shrugging this a bit off, as it can go for the Clear Smog, trying to make sure that this opposing Flutter main does go down.
Well, exactly, because the only other offensive option that Torkoal has would be the Overheat, which we all know has a chance of missing. So you just want to guarantee and any sort of damage to pick up the KO. As we go, we are going to see the King Gambit switch in right now. So Álex is down to his final 2 Pokemon versus Federico's 2 final Pokemon. We've got an Iron Bundle on the field. It is going to be highly threatening, this Great Tusk. At the moment, I would probably put this to Alex's advantage of maybe a 75 to 25%.
Yeah, because a Great Tusk did go for Protect last turn, there is that possibility, of course, that likely that it goes for an attack, but it actually tries to go for that second Protect, but unfortunately failing. But that means the King Gambit Sucker Punch at least doesn't work, meaning the Armor Freeze Drive will go into that Great Tusk, putting it on its Focus Sash, but leaves this Torkoal free to play whatever it wants to do. As we said, Yawn is still something that can be used. The Yawn onto the Delibird, and now the possibility of just protecting again, making sure this Iron Bundle at least falls asleep, while this Torkoal can kind of deal with potentially the Iron Bundle or the King Gambit with its Overheat.
And this all of a sudden changes the dynamics. I think Álex really needed to focus down on the Torkoal. The Great Tusk was too threatened not to go for the Protect, unless, of course, Federico wanted to just gauge into Alex's mindset there. If you get rid of the Torkoal, maybe with a double up, of course, via Hydro Pump Connect in the sun, accompanied by an Assurance from the King Gambit, you will likely pick up the KO, but there is the Citrus Berry to take into consideration, which is quite tough, and something I guess we sort of overlooked. The fact that Citrus Berry proves to be quite vital and influential when it comes to the decision-making of Alex's side, as the Icy Wind does connect. Great Tusk is going to be going down. However, is this Torkoal capable enough to win this one out, 2 versus 1?
It is hard to say, of course, because yeah, we see due to the King Gambit go for the Assurance not being enough, but that Torkoal enjoying that berry very nicely, just trying to make sure that it can survive. And if it goes for the attack in the Overheat into the Iron Bundle this time around, but with its Focus Sash will be able to survive. And now it's just suddenly a 2v1 again, and looking very hard for this Torkoal to do it.
It really is. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any sort of spread move on this particular set, such as Eruption, or in this case, Heat Wave would have been probably the preferred way to go about it. As we had to be seen, Federico puts in, well, will likely concede the match. I'm not sure. It looked like he was going to actually go ahead with the button. I'm not sure if there was a timeout or something like that. However, we do have the final situation where Overheat is still out, trying to target down the King Gambit. Even if you do have these special attack drops now at -4 when it comes to its stages, at least you're in a situation that you can rely on critical hits, although we get Federico's confirmation of the cancellation this turn.
Exactly. The Iron Bundle also with that potential of waking up there. It is kind of hard, as we saw the damage not being that hard. You can try to go for crits, but that is the thing, of course, with critical hits. They happen with a little bit of chance. You can't just, you can make them happen if you run focus energy and such.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Yeah, but sometimes you want to try, maybe it comes out, like if I crit right now with the sun up, I could have potentially killed this King Gambit even with the Assault Vest.
You've got to go for your win conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's very respectable. It's sort of this unspoken understanding between trainers. You know that for the fact that you're competing in the tournament, you're very well aware of what to expect when it comes to this game, and you need to take advantage where you can in order to benefit your own self to get the win. So scenarios like that we've seen when it comes to timer stalls or something like some sort of alternative method of winning. You need to take into consideration all potential outcomes, something that is a true valor to a very veteran-like players in previous formats, where timer was more prominent when it came based on very slow playing formats. It is something that they had the experience about. The past couple of generations have been very quick, very dynamic. So there's not a lot of scenarios that we have actually encountered time stall situations, but that is not in this situation at the current moment. We do have Álex that has been able to force this into a game 3. So Federico is going to have to go back to the drawing board and consider how he could try to counteract this momentum.
Exactly, and we mentioned earlier, like, maybe the swap to Dragonite would have been a smart pick there. And Dragonite putting in decent work, just trying to make sure that the Roaring Moon would have gone down with that Terra Blast. So, did get a critical hit there, but of course, there's always that chance of having that. Just try go for it again later with your Torkoal as well. He gets one. Can I have one? Yes, please.
I mean, if it works, don't fix it.
Exactly.
It's not broke, don't fix it. Sorry.
Exactly.
That's right. As we randomly seen the photosynthesis on the Flutter Mane over on Alex's side, will be getting that additional boost dealt onto its side. So, looking into this, we've got the same sort of pressure that was already existing with the Great Tusk on the field, but Federico does always have that switch in. So what will he consider keeping on the field out of the two Paradox Pokemon that do have photosynthesis, and which other Pokemon will he opt to switch out? Because there's a couple of things that you need to take into consideration. Are we expecting another Flying Terror type coming out from this Dragonite? Or perhaps, can we see it from the Flutter Mane? Go for the Fairy Terror and go for maximum amount of damage output.
As we do see the Flutter Mane on Federico's side, actually switching out for that Torkoal, getting that photosynthesis boost for his Great Tusk, which could be supposed to be very interesting because, of course, that Great Tusk getting that boost, very nice, firstly, but can't really touch the Dragonite, so to speak, but it has that ability to still hit that Flutter Mane really hard, as that Dragonite does manage to go for its Terra Flying type, meaning it could go for a Terra Blast and maybe targeting that into the what used to be the Flutter Mane slot, and this Torkoal can be defensively bulky.
Oh, it might be indeed. Flutter Mane goes for the Protect because of that switch in and the fact that the Great Tusk is in. I was going to say right now, it makes sense to target down the Flutter Mane. You want to at least get rid of it. You know it doesn't have Focus Sash. It does have Booster Energy, but we see the Tailwind has now been set up. So this Dragonite, which may have been underspeeding the Great Tusk, is no longer underspeeding. It is much faster, should I say doubly faster.
Doubly faster indeed. And this is so interesting to see because, like, we were kind of theorizing what could this Dragonite do potentially, but now going for the Tailwind, trying to make sure that his Pokemon will always move first, and being in a position where the Dragonite with a Terra Blast can do a lot of damage to this Great Tusk. And then, of course, you have the Flutter Mane, which already got the booster energy, meaning that it can do a lot of damage as well, with potential Shadow Ball, Dazzling Gleam as well, like that spread move to try and make sure that the Great Tusk can't really resist, as we do see the Dazzling Gleam from that Flutter Mane come out.
Exactly. Great Tusk has been brought down to its Focus Sash. Of course, Terra Blast will be coming out. Which target is it going for? It's actually going to be the Torkoal. Is it enough? No, it is not. This Torkoal, this Fire Tortoise, is so bulky when it comes to its physical defense. It's going to be able to munch on that delicious little citrus berry, which will get a bit of recovery back for itself. Headlong Rush, however, does pick up the KO onto the Flutter Mane. It is out for the count in this game 3, which will allow Álex a bit more of breathing space, perhaps to bring in a new, fresh Pokemon to counteract the current Pokemon on the field for Federico, as Overheat not able to deal as much due to the multi-scale still being active and not being broken in previous turns.
Exactly, and now the multi-scale being broken does help a bit. Just checking the Tailwind turns as well there. Now, that Terra Blast doing so little damage to the Torkoal was so surprising to me, because we've seen so many Terra Blasts do so much damage in earlier games as well, where it's just so strong. But this little turtle showcasing how swole, how bulky, and how helpful it can be with every step it takes. Of course, now because of the Great Tusk is on its Focus Sash, it is in a position where it is threatened by a lot of things. Can only really hit, again, the Iron Bottle, but the Iron Bottle actually trying to protect itself while the Great Tusk protects itself as well, meaning this Torkoal and Dragonite are the ones gonna make the move here.
Yeah, I really like this play from Alex's side. That Protect there on the Iron Bundle was a scout to protect. anticipating the protect from Great Tusk, especially given the fact that the Dragonite did target down the Torkoal. So very nice play there, very good board state awareness. You want to slowly get rid of any sort of fumes that this Torkoal is able to exude and exhaust them, essentially, whilst guaranteeing you're always going to pick up the Great Tusk slot. You just need to time it to the point where you need to be very cautious that Federico does still have 2 fresh Pokemon in the back, does still have Terra available for themselves to utilize. So don't give your opponent too much room, but you still need to time it maybe when Tailwind expires to get another Tailwind set up if you need that speed control pressure from your side.
Exactly, and also Torkoal going for that Clear Smog onto that Iron Balloon, trying to break its Focus Sash, trying to make sure for the next Pokemon that come in to potentially is able to KO that after the Sash being broken, because of course you need to hit it twice, as we do see a switch out actually from the Great Tusk into the Roaring Moon, where its attack is heightened thanks to that Photosynthesis.
Oh.
As we see the Freeze Ray into that Roaring Moon, doing a lot of damage there, because of course still a Dragon type, while the Dragonite goes for Terra Blast into Torkoal, just trying to make sure that this Torkoal can no longer be helping handing his allies.
Torkoal is out of this set. Confirmed, of course. Tailwind does peter out at this point from Alex's side. However, we do have the Iron Bundle. It is still on the field. It is going to likely be the fastest thing, if not for the speed that has been heightened on the Flutter Mane over on Federico's side. So being able to time that quite nicely from Federico's point of view is really good for them. They're able to at least guarantee they will be outspeeding right now, at least with the Flutter Mane, to get that immediate pressure. So it's always going to be a battle between speed tierings when it comes to these team compositions, as well as the play styles from both of these veteran-like trainers.
Exactly, now being in the position where the Iron Bundle still has his Focus Sash, can potentially go for another Protect, trying to secure that, and the Dragonite trying to go for a Tailwind potentially, just for the next Pokemon to be able to be faster again than the Flutterwing that did get the speed boost there. Because of course now Dragonite looking like the slowest Pokemon onto the field, but that Dragonite does have one interesting thing, being that extreme speed, still being able to deal quite a bit of damage. And we see the Terra Fairy from the Fluttermane actually coming out, trying to do as much damage as possible. You have this Sun, you have this Choice Specs, you have the speed advantage, and now you have the Terra to do a lot more damage.
You do indeed. So Iron Bundle does not want to risk its situation at the current point. Dazzling Gleam, Fairy Terra type boosted, is going to be launched out into this Dragonite. Not quite enough to pick up that KO, but the double up is indeed. Throat Chop targets it down, does pick up the KO, absolutely ignores the Iron Bundle because it knows that Alex will really want to rely on it, especially when Sun has expired, which it has done so in this exact turn. So a couple of different situations to take into consideration and mind games occurring within that. Do you protect the Iron Bundle? Do you not? Do you try to focus it down? The Terra type choice as well as the Flutter Mane, as opposed to the Roaring Moon going for the Fire type. There's another dimension of mind games there. Does the Iron Bundle try to focus it down with the Hydro Pump or not? But it doesn't matter anymore because the Freeze Dry is more than enough to pick up the KO. Roaring Moon is out, and Flutter Mane is going to try its best to bring this one back for Federico, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough.
It is a very tough situation because, of course, the King Gambit can't move right now. Going for the Iron, super effective Iron, and just going for the KO, meaning this the only Pokemon in the back is that Great Tusk there. And unfortunately for that Great Tusk, it only has that Focus Sash proc, so it means it only has that 1 HP left. And you still have a full, still have a King Gambit at quite a bit of HP, and the Iron Bundle still being amazingly fast, that can outspeed you. So in the end, Álex Gómez has been able to pull this out. Well played, both of these players. It was very impressive to see.
What an exciting set from these trainers. Of course, that does mean that Álex is going to be able to now have a very stellar record of 10-1 going into the following round 3 of Day 2 Swiss. However, it's not all over for Federico. He was already at a really good record. If he can win out the next couple of matches, he'll be able to do a very good job in being able to target down the slot of top 8.
Exactly. That is, of course, the goal of these Swiss rounds. You want to have as many wins as possible to try and get that top 8. And then eventually you want to get further, like top 4. Then you want to get further, top 2. And then you want the final. You want the final.
You want the title.
You want it. You want that Utrecht champion title as well, of course. It was an amazing match to see, and a lot of back and forth there because, as we mentioned with the Dragon Knight earlier, like maybe trying to tailwind there, but there were so many things to keep in mind as that time, and I feel Álex played that very well, trying to preserve the focus sash on the Iron Bundle as well, and just always that King Gambit in the back, which always was threatening with potential sucker punches, but also with that bulk that it has.
Yep, it's just so reliable. King Gambit as a Pokemon. I think because having the Assault Vest, and you've got a couple of options of coverage, of course, having the amazing defensive bulk on the King Gambit, you got the Defiant, you've got a lot of threats. It's really a problematic Pokemon, even without it Terra typing, right?
Yeah.
So obviously Álex didn't prefer to go for the Terra typing there. It made more sense to have the Dragonite to get rid of the Dragon weakness to Fairy type moves, and then obviously you could get the Tailwind set up in combination with the multi-scale. Allows for a relatively safe sort of play. He saw that it didn't work as well as he would have liked in Game 2, even though he did win it. So he thought, okay, no, I'm going to adapt even further going into Game 3. I want to establish that Tailwind support in order to allow my Dragonite to sort of move a bit more freely, as well as my other partner Pokemon. Even King Gambit, for example, can actually go ahead and function quite nicely, maybe dependent on certain speed tiers, do incredibly well.
Exactly. And just in general, that Dragonite did put in a lot of work. We have been seeing a lot of Dragonite action this weekend, the previous rounds, yesterday and today. And it is such a good Pokemon to see being used. It is that Terra Blast that is so powerful, that coming into everything. Of course, on Federico's side, playing very well with that Sun, like trying all his Pokemon to get a boost. I really felt the Great Tusk was really well used there.
Exactly that. But of course, what we will be doing is, unfortunately, we won't have a winner's interview. We'll be cutting to a short break where we will be back with round 3 of Day 2 Swiss. So if you haven't already, please get your refreshments, and we'll be seeing you very shortly.